Well done, Pete, for Minnesota Surfer. And Ebony K. Williams just killing it.
A valiant effort.
And we got to thank Reggie from Party Perfect Rentals. PartyPerfectRentals.com. You can get a wave in your doorstep. On the Sunday edition of Fox and Friends. Ebony K. Williams. Great week.
Amazing weekend.
Love having you. Have a great Sunday.
Good Sunday morning. Lawmakers are working to hash out their differences in the Senate and House tax bills, aiming to get a final product to the president's desk before Christmas. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Welcome to Sunday Morning Futures. What issues are critical to a unified bill that satisfies both chambers of Congress? House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy joins me in moments. Plus, more potential red flags in the Russia investigation. One Mueller investigator reportedly attended Hillary Clinton's party on election night. Will this boost the idea that this investigation is conflicted all around? I'll ask former Attorney General Michael Mukasey, who will join me momentarily. And what's next after President Trump's decision to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? Congressman Peter King on how it will affect peace efforts as we look ahead right now on Sunday Morning Futures. The push for tax reform now in the final leg of Congress. This is a big week. The House Senate Conference Committee prepares to meet publicly on Wednesday to finalize a sweeping tax overhaul. There are several key differences between the House and Senate versions, like, for example, income tax deductions and family tax credits. Joining me right now is the House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy. Congressman, it's great to see you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Can you talk to us about the status of this bill? You've been leading this conference this last week and now into this week. This is a big week for you.
This is a very big week, but we've made great progress. Think of this. We moved to have the House come back in. We weren't supposed to start till Tuesday of last week, but we came in Monday just so we can move to go to conference. The Senate did the same, so now the conferees are named. It's the way the founders have created this country to work. The House and Senate have two different bills. Structurally, they're pretty similar. They're going to work out those differences. Hopefully they can get that done this week. We come back the next week and vote on it.
The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget is out with a lot of reports on the bill, basically saying, don't let December be the debt-busting month. This could actually cost up to $2 trillion. How do you pay for it? You've been looking very carefully on ways to pay for this tax cut bill. Where are you finding it? Is there any wiggle room on this 20% corporate rate, for example, that is being discussed now? Some people are talking maybe you raise it to 22% from the initial idea of 20%. That gets you extra money to go toward other areas like the state and local tax deduction elimination.
That's a place that we can always look at. But the one thing that you do, both bills only ride it to $1.5 trillion. And remember this, if we grow 0.4%, you will pay for all this. The debt that we have is one of the most critical things we have to look after. But we cannot solve this debt problem without growing the economy. And that's why we wrote a tax plan that's pro-growth, creates more jobs, brings more money that's sitting overseas back into America, brings more companies that have left America back in to hire more people, and most importantly, puts more money in Americans' paychecks. Yeah. So I think we can achieve all of that, and this is the first step in taking care of it.
And I totally agree that lowering the corporate rate from the highest in the industrialized world is going to move the needle on economic growth. I got you on that. The corporate tax cut, very highly looked at as very strong. But the individual side, that's where people say it gets messy, because there are a lot of people who are going to get their taxes go up because of the elimination of the state and local tax deduction. So what I've been saying on the air a lot is, why are you lowering taxes on the people who don't pay taxes and raising taxes on the people who do pay taxes, knowing that the 10% of the highest earners pay 71%.
And this is a very critical part. And having come also from a SALT state, California, I looked at this and I went back. So the top 10% make $133,000 and higher in this country. So when looking at our tax bill, those individuals currently pay $2.54 trillion. The joint tax analyzed the bill. For those who are making $100,000 or more, they'll pay $2.4 trillion. So the numbers say something different, that they'll actually pay less. So when you lower the rates overall, everybody starts off with a lower rate, meaning they have to pay less. Now, when we close different items in there that you can make deductible. You have to look at the entire bill to see what you'd pay at the end of the day.
You're right now trying to lower the top rate on individuals, correct?
There's a couple things I'd like to do, especially coming from California and SALT. Inside our bill, we put $10,000 for property tax deduction. I would like to add income, saying $10,000 for one or the other, because there's some elements in California, because of Prop 13, you might not reach it on property tax, but your income could. I would also like to raise that mortgage rate.
You could put the $10,000 either to pay your property taxes or
income.
State and local income.
Other.
Okay, sorry, continue.
I would like to lower the top rate because I do not believe at the end of the day you should punish people for being successful.
Thank you. That's what I'm saying.
Especially in SALT. And you knowing that the 10% pay 70%, but it's also the consumption and the movement of an economy.
Right.
Now, the Senate already has a lower rate than the House. I'd like to see if we could lower that more. And then when I look at the mortgage, the House has one version of $500 and the Senate has $1 million. I'd like to see the Senate version make the Couse version go up higher.
So somebody asked me earlier, is this $10,000 deduction for property tax, could you do both, $10,000 for property and $10,000 for state and local income, taking that to $20,000?
No, I think what you do is $10,000 for one or the other, or a combination thereof. Remember what happens here, though, too. We double the standard deduction. So only 1/3 of America actually itemizes. Now you get to keep more of what you earn. An average family of 4 making $55,000 will pay 0 tax going forward. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the entire bill, AMT, now this is a part in the Senate bill I'd like to see removed. In the House version, we eliminate the alternative minimum tax. So if somebody was paying the alternative minimum tax and SALT, that actually is a larger hit on your taxes than before, so that saves you more money in the process. And in business, it would hurt businesses to keep the alternative minimum tax,
right,
which the Senate does. So I would like to see that eliminated.
So do you think you're going to get that? I mean,
well, that's what we're working on in conference. These are some of the differences that we have, but we're in the structure overall are very close. I think we come to a solution very quickly.
Let me ask you, I'm very surprised that nothing was done with carried interest, the carried interest deduction there, because that stays. And that allows private equity managers, real estate developers, certain people, high-end, rich people, to actually claim that certain income is capital gains and get a charged 20% tax versus 39.6.
Now, it's not exactly the same as it was in the past. In the House version, they extended it out, have to invest longer and more years. So you're making a longer investment. And that's what entrepreneurship is, make a longer investment instead of 1 year into 3 years.
But if you've got the left basically saying, hey, this is a giveaway to the rich, and we know it's not. We know what this plan is, and corporate rates coming down is very, very important. But you've got this talking point on the left coming at you. I don't understand why you would leave carried interest deduction in there. It basically is for the rich. I mean, it's one of those places. What would that get you? $100 billion? What does that get you if you totally take that out?
Well, I don't know exactly what it would actually score at. I don't believe it scores that high in the process.
So it's not that much money then?
No.
Okay.
But the thing you have to remember, we focused on being pro-growth, making American competitive, simplifying in the process, and that's why you get the standard deduction. So come next February, everybody should check their check because their withholding is going to be better. They're going to get more money in their paycheck starting out. And if the majority of money, you look at the survey, that people are fighting just for $400 every week, this will make a fundamental difference. And those are the Americans we really were looking at from the very beginning. How do we create more jobs? When we rolled this bill out, we had a company, Broadcom, who had left America, announced they were coming back.
Yes.
With, repatriation almost better than anyone. Think of those trillions of dollars that are going to come back to America, invest in American jobs, and also pay out the dividends.
Yeah.
Every step,
I agree, yeah.
Every step we've taken with taxes where we've come closer, what's happened with the markets? How many times have we set a new record in this stock market, which I will say, based upon the move we did with regulation and tax?
Totally agree. Yeah. So is there any way this doesn't pass in the next 2 weeks? I mean, you're right. $6 trillion in market value. You've got a lot riding on this. People are expecting this to happen now. Now the market is pricing in a bit that we're going to have success here.
Look, I feel very confident we're going to get this done. I remember being on your show when we were worried about the Senate. You will see in the news ups and downs downs as we go, but at the end of the day, we're going to get this to the president's desk. He's going to sign it. And I've never watched a president so engaged. I was speaking to the Treasury Secretary last night. I talked to the president last week. He is engaged to make sure this happens because he wants to keep his promise to create more jobs and make sure that the middle class in this country gets an increase in their wages.
Do you think you're going to be done by next Friday, the 15th?
Well, think about how big of what we're trying to accomplish here. If we are successful inside the conference, I want to make sure you go through all the Senate rules, you cross the T's, dot the I's, you print it out. I would probably think it would be the week after when you would vote. We want to make sure people can read this. I know we've been debating this for years. We've had the bill laying out there so people can see it and read through it, and it's going to stay between the two. As soon as we can get it done, we will.
Real quick before you go, you voted several times on moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The president made the move, announced that he is going to do that this week. It's taken a while. Give me the history on this.
Well, the history is, if you go back to almost any modern history, president that was running made this promise that they would. This is the first president who kept his promise. But as early as last June, even in the Senate, we passed a resolution unanimously that would move the embassy to Jerusalem. That is their capital. It is reality. It's common sense of what you're able to do here. And if someone kept their promise, it shocked the world. I think this president is going to keep his promise, just as he kept his promise that we're going to get tax reform done.
Wow. If you get this over the finish line in the next 2 weeks, this is a huge thing for you. Congratulations.
No, don't congratulate us till we get it done, but we will keep working on it.
We will be watching this. This is a big piece of legislation and a great victory. Are you worried about 2018, the election?
You know what? If you worry about the election, you're not going to accomplish anything. Why don't you go accomplish things that you promised to do, then go back to the voters and show you what you're able to achieve? I think you'll get a good result.
That's what we'll be watching. Kevin McCarthy, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy there. Mounting claims of bias, meanwhile, on Special Counsel Mueller's team, with new reports of Clinton connections. Former Attorney General Michael Mukasey is joining me next on what this all means for the Russia investigation. Follow me on Twitter, at Maria Bartiromo, at Sunday Futures. Let us know what you'd like to hear from A.G. Mukasey. He's next. We're looking ahead on Sunday Morning Futures right now. Welcome back. More Clinton connections emerging in the Russia meddling investigation. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Robert Mueller investigator Andrew Weissman attended Hillary Clinton's election party last November. This amid growing complaints from Republicans of bias in the investigation. Joining me right now is Judge Michael Mukasey. He served as the U.S. Attorney General under the George W. Bush administration. He is also a former federal judge. Judge, it's good to see you.
Good to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So what do you make of all of this? I mean, first of all, you've got these investigators who investigated Hillary Clinton. They went to her party. They were partying up a storm together, and then he's actually interviewing her for the FBI. You've got Michael Flynn pleading guilty to lying, and yet Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills lied to the FBI. No problem there. Is this investigation a sham?
I don't think the investigation is a sham, and obviously everybody's got an opinion, a political opinion, some of them. It's perfectly fine to have political opinions, but when you start expressing them in public, if you're a public official, that gets dicey. And most people, I think, in public jobs know that. Everybody in a public job has an opinion, but not everybody in a public job goes around expressing it, and goes around expressing it in the form of attendance at rallies or making contributions.
But it is pretty extraordinary, though, to see Mueller's team. I mean, he had to fire one of his agents. Actually, he wasn't fired. He now works in the HR division of the FBI. But he took him off of the investigation because he was found out to be sending anti-Trump texts to his girlfriend. So what do you do about a politicization of the FBI?
Well, you expose it and stop it. I think that the problem with the lawyer who attended the rallies, Andrew Weissman, is a lot deeper than just attending a party. He participated in the Enron investigation, and every single criminal trial in that case that ended in a conviction was reversed either entirely or in part on appeal, and in large measure, particularly with the Arthur Anderson conviction that resulted in destruction of an accounting firm, reversed by the Supreme Court because he had pushed the obstruction statute too far. He was responsible for that. And he is, guess what, investigating a case that is alleged to involve obstruction. I don't know that I'd rely on his judgment in how far you go with the obstruction case.
That's interesting. You know, people don't understand the Enron background there, that everything was turned around.
Not everything, but many things, and there was no conviction after a trial that stood completely.
So what should be done here in terms of the Robert Mueller investigation? I mean, every day we hear more interviews being done. Hope Hicks, the PR woman at the White House, people that, you know, and the media is getting it wrong. You saw the hysteria a week ago that the president directed Michael Flynn. Then we learned that it was actually in December, a month before he's about to take office. Is there anything that should be done right now in terms of this Robert Mueller investigation where they're continuing to look for collusion that we all know does not exist?
I think that the best thing to do is wait for the outcome and not engage in fevered speculation about what the outcome might be.
But Judge, when is the outcome? I mean, this has been going on a long time. How much is this costing American taxpayers? Tens of millions of dollars?
It's costing them quite a lot, but it's also costing them a lot in terms of diverted energy and attention. And I think that's, in a way, a higher price to pay in terms of our politics.
So what's your whole assessment of this, then?
Well, I think we have to wait to see where, if anywhere, it goes. But I'm hoping that in the end, Mr. Mueller lives up to a lot of the advance notice about his reputation and has the courage to say if there's nothing there, that there's nothing there.
Christopher Wray testified last week, the new FBI director, and was asked about politicizing happening at the FBI. Here's what he had to say. Listen to this.
As I sit here today, I am not aware of, since I've been on the job, there's been no effort that I've seen going forward here, any effort to interfere with Special Counsel Mueller's investigation.
Truthful? Should we trust this?
Yeah, he says no effort to interfere with Mueller's investigation. That's pretty innocuous.
Right. The bigger story is, right, are they looking at the right things? Are they investigating the Clinton team? I mean, we just talked about the fact that Cheryl Mills and Huma Abedin lied to the FBI, then Cheryl Mills got immunity. That response didn't speak to that at all. That response simply spoke to what's going on now in an effort or absence of effort to interfere with the investigation. Answer: nothing. But what about
so
the Clinton? What about the Clinton investigation? Is there one? Or are we just going to keep turning over rocks looking for collusion with Donald Trump? I
think it'll be interesting to find out what Chairman Nunes discloses in the investigation that his committee is carrying on, which is going on fairly quietly but steadily. And I think we're going to find out quite a bit.
There is an effort, though, to keep that aside, keep that under wraps, keep this whole Clinton part of the investigation under wraps, frankly. And so the American people don't really understand what's happening with that. You're saying that that investigation will yield important results.
If the investigation is ongoing, it belongs under wraps.
Right. Okay. But in the meantime, all we hear about is Trump and potential collusion with Russia. I understand it's all speculation. It's all speculation, and if you look at it, it's all hot air. Yeah.
So, you know, you can't censor people in the media from talking about and speculating about what they want to talk about and speculate about.
When would you expect news from the Nunes investigation?
I don't know, but I do expect at some point that there will be news.
Attorney General, it's great to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much. AG Michael Mukasey there. Protests turning deadly near the Israeli-Palestinian border. Meanwhile, after President Trump recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, we'll get into it next. Stay with us. Welcome back. 14 members of the United Nations Security Council condemning President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Deadly clashes between Israelis and Palestinians this weekend. President Trump's announcement also included plans to begin moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a process Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says would take at least 2 years. Congressman Pete King says this: the decision was not easy and there is no guarantee of success, but it was the right move at the right time. The congressman joins me right now. He is a member of the Intel and Homeland Security Committees. And Congressman King, it is always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Maria. Maria, can I just say at the start, I agree with everything Attorney General Mukasey said. I think there have been mistakes in this investigation, but I think the worst thing the president could do right now is to remove Mueller, not because he's doing such a great job, but the president's lawyers are confident this is going in the right direction. I don't want to give the Democrats, the media, an opportunity to blow this up and come up with another phony issue.
I totally understand that.
I just had to get that in.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did, and I totally understand what you're saying. But the bottom line is, Congressman, it's getting really old to constantly hear Robert Mueller call people into his office to interview Hope Hicks.
Right.
Really? Come on. Donald Jr., all of these interviews, and then the media speculates as if there's this major Watergate scandal going on, when everybody knows if there was any collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians, it would have been leaked a year ago.
Yeah, I was at the interview with Donald Trump Jr., and I can tell you he answered just about every question. The ones he didn't were for very precise technical reasons. Nobody listening to that interview could come out of that thinking there was any collusion at all. This is totally phony, but I don't want to give them a chance to talk about another Saturday Night Massacre, another special counsel, and drag it on. If the president's lawyers are confident it's going in that direction, I think it's better to just go along with it right now and get it wrapped up and over and done with.
I totally understand that, but people also want to see justice on the other side, Congressman.
Oh,
we know Cheryl Mills got immunity, and she lied to the FBI. We know Huma Abedin lied to the FBI, and we know Loretta Lynch told her deputy, Jim Comey, running the FBI, to call a criminal investigation a matter. People want to see justice, Congressman.
I agree with you totally, and I'm on the committee investigating the uranium deal. And I believe that once the collusion issue is out of the way, we can really focus on everything that happened in the Hillary Clinton investigation, why Comey did what he did, why there were attorneys and investigators involved in that with such a pro-Clinton bias, what happened with Cheryl Mills, what happened with Huma Abedin. But it would be a lot easier to get that message out once we get this collusion phony issue out of the way.
So you think, you're on the committee overseeing the uranium investigation, you think we're going to get into that in 2018 then?
Oh, it's already started. I can tell you it started. Yeah, we've started. We're talking. We're doing the background. We're going to be talking to witnesses. Yes, this is going ahead.
Okay. Let's move on to the other big story this past week, and that is the president recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Here's what he said. Listen to this, Congressman.
It would be folly to assume that repeating the exact same formula would now produce a different or better result. Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Consistent with the Jerusalem Embassy Act, I am also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
So there you go. I understand the reasoning. I mean, 2 presidents before President Trump have said they would do this, and they never did it. As you just heard Kevin McCarthy say, they voted on it, certainly even in the Senate. They voted to move the embassy, and it was never done. My only question is, Congressman, why now? The president has so much on his plate right now. You've got North Korea in one corner, ISIS in another, a tax plan hanging in the balance. Why did he have to do this today?
I think the president feels he can always work with the full court press. He can do many things at the same time. And I think it was the right thing to do because, first of all, the peace process, there is none right now. It's a total impasse. If there's one at all, it's stagnant. It's the status quo. Nothing is happening. And there is violence. I think this will help. This could help to jumpstart the peace process. Also, if you notice, there's been a very muted reaction from the Arab governments. I know they have to make some pro forma statements. But listen, they would much rather have President Trump playing an active role in the Middle East that what went on during the Obama years, where Iran was built up, Israel was sold out, the government in Egypt was overthrown. President Obama withdrew his pledge in Syria. He put people like King Abdullah on the line to support us in Syria. Then he invited the Russians in instead. So, no, listen, on balance, this is the right thing to do. There's no guarantee it's going to work. But I really think that something was needed to be done to let the Palestinians know, yes, we are standing strongly with Israel, but we are willing to be an honest broker. And for these European countries that complain about us somehow upsetting the peace process, what have they done for the peace process over the last 50 years? France and Germany, what have they done?
Well, that's a really good point. And by the way, on the peace process conversation, I just got back from Saudi Arabia, and I couldn't believe the mentality and the sentiment in Saudi about stomping out terrorism. I mean, the Crown Prince, future king, told me directly, we're going to get extremists down to 5% of this country in the next couple of years. Then he turns around and he arrests all of these princes, royal family members, who he says got their money, fraudulently because they were funding terrorists. So, and then to hear the Crown Prince align Saudi with Israel, Congressman, that's pretty stunning.
Right. Yeah. Nobody would have thought 20 years ago that you would have so many prominent Arab leaders, both openly and very much behind the scenes, working with the Israelis. Right now, the Saudis, the Jordanians, UAE, Egypt, these countries are certainly far closer to Israel than they've ever been than anyone could have even anticipated years ago.
Congressman, before you go, I got to ask you about taxes. You voted no on the tax plan. You just heard Kevin McCarthy. He said, no, you're not talking about $10,000 for property taxes and another $10,000 cap for state and local income. He says it's one $10,000 property cap, and that's going to, he's hoping to be able to put toward property or state and local income. I know we're getting into the weeds a little here, but what would it take for you to vote yes on a final bill?
If they could get that to 20,000, use the 10,000 on both, and I tell you, I'm right now calling on the president, if he can meet with the New York Republicans on this issue, take one final shot. He's a New Yorker. He's the guy from Queens. He's the guy who understands what this is about. So, Mr. President, we would love to sit down with you. Elise Edelin, Dan Donovan, Elise Stefanik, John Faso, and I would love to have 10 minutes of your time to get this resolved.
Would Kevin McCarthy just said he's trying to get the top rate down. He wants to get the top rate now at 39.6. He wants to get it to 35%. That's what he's pushing for this upcoming week as he deals with his colleagues in the Senate. Would that offset enough for you?
Not really. That wouldn't affect the... Listen,
okay.
I'm not opposed to that. But having said that, I want to make sure that the middle-income voters and constituents in my district don't get hurt badly on SALT the way they would be.
Of course. Congressman, it's great to see you as always. Thanks so much.
Maria,
happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you. A Christmas deadline approaching for Congress. Welcome back. It is a big week ahead for the Republican tax reform effort and the markets as the House-Senate Conference Committee begins meeting to iron out differences between their respective tax bills before they leave for the holiday winter break. We want to bring in Illinois Congressman Peter Roskam right now. He is a member of the House-Senate Conference Committee on the GOP tax bill. And Congressman, it's good to see you on the program this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
Can you walk us through the
you.
status for us? Can you give us a status check in terms of what you need to iron out this coming week? What are the last remaining sticking points, sir?
So here's what we've got to figure out. We've got to come to some agreement on how both of these bills treat pass-through entities, that is, businesses that are treated, pay taxes at the individual rate. How do we deal with that? We've got to figure out how we deal on the international side in particular. There's been two visions of that. Both the House and the Senate have approached it differently. We've got to figure out how to give more middle-income tax relief, and everybody's working on that. And then we also have to figure out how do you reconcile things on the estate tax and bring the child tax credit into harmony. There's other things as well, but those are the top line efforts, and I'm confident that we're moving in a direction that can get that done.
Would you mind doing a corporate rate of 22% for both pass-throughs and corporate? Rather than 20% corporate, 25% pass-throughs, which was what was initially in the House bill. Do you think we could get to a place where it's 22% on both?
Well, we passed the 20 and 25 for a reason, and the reason is corporations, C-Corps, are double taxed. So they pay income tax and they also pay dividends when the money is taken out. So you're getting more or less business parity at 20 and 25. But that said, Maria, look, there's a lot of numbers that are in play right now, and there's a disposition among the conferees of trying to get to yes on these things, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to get that done.
Look, I recognize that the debt is a serious issue here, $20 trillion in debt, and the deficit is going to go up likely over the near term because this plan is costing $1.5 trillion. Maya McGinnis from the Committee on Responsible Budget says it could actually ultimately cost $2 trillion. So you're looking for different areas where to take money from to pay for this. I'm scratching my head wondering why carried interest was not touched. I understand this is not a lot of money, but why do you still have carried interest deduction in there, which allows some managers, hedge fund managers, private equity executives, to claim a 20% tax rate when, in fact, some people say that that should go to the high rate at 39.6?
So I'll answer the carried interest question. Let me get to the debt question because there's a relationship. So first of all, we're borrowing money intentionally in the same way that you borrow to buy a house, you borrow to put it in your business, you borrow money to get something for it that's increasing in value. And here we're getting two things. Number one, we're getting a new tax code. We're just buying a brand new tax code, which is a terrific thing for all the obvious reasons. The other thing is we're buying a more robust economy. So I don't buy the notion that this is somehow going to cost $2 trillion, and we can get into sort of all the budget math. I think it's likely $1 trillion. So on carried interest, look, nobody's doing a candlelight vigil or a hunger strike for people at the very top end of the economic chain. But my point is we've got to be very careful that just blowing up carried interest, for example, can have an adverse impact on modest real estate deals out in my constituency in suburban Chicago, where you've got a developer and so forth that are coming together and trying to align interests. The name of the game we've chosen in this to lengthen the duration of the carry time. To your point earlier, it doesn't raise a lot of money if you abolish it. And what we're trying to do is to create growth and lean in and ultimately have an economy that can be transformational.
So what you're saying is those deals in real estate that could go away because they don't have the carried interest 20% rate, that's more important than the fact that you eliminate the state and local tax deduction, and you're going to see an exodus of people out of high-tax states like New York. Don Peebles the other day on Mornings with Maria on the Fox Business Network told me he's expecting real estate prices to drop 10% in New York because of the exodus of people that are going to leave because they're losing that deduction. So that carried interest is more important than that then.
Look, I think the hyperbole and the overstatement and the overcharacterization about all these negative things that are purported to happen if we move forward on this is a hidden blessing, because those things are not going to happen. What is going to happen is this economy is going to grow in ways that we've not seen it a long time. I'm from a comparatively high tax state. If all you're doing is evaluating one deduction, that is state and local tax deduction, and not looking at anything else, then yeah, the criticism is valid.
Right.
But this has to be evaluated in its totality.
I agree.
Look at the rates. Look at what's happening in terms of child tax credit, the new family credit, and all of the other business things that are happening.
I'm glad you mentioned the family credit, Congressman, because I don't know. This is another head scratcher for me. You're spending $650 billion on a family credit, a family tax credit that goes to all families. So even a very rich family that doesn't need any more deductions, you're going to give them the family tax credit. Somebody who's of well means and on the high end gets the same tax credit that somebody on the low end gets?
So now everybody's arguing in the alternative, because on the one hand, there's a criticism that we're not doing enough, and on the other hand, there's a criticism that we're doing too much.
I'm just looking for money.
What we're trying to do is figure out, right. And what we're trying to do is figure out where do these things, where should they phase out, what's an appropriate level, and these are all the things, Maria, that the conference committee is dealing with. Adjusting these dials so that you create a tax code that people say, yeah, I have confidence in that. Yes, I want to invest in that.
So
yes, I'm getting tax relief that I need.
Are you going to put a cap on the family tax credit in terms of income?
Well, we'll see. I mean, these are all parts of the discussions that the conference committee is dealing with. So I'm not going to get ahead of the conferees. I'm not going to get ahead of my chairman. But there's a number of these issues that are obviously part of a discussion right now, trying to figure out how you ultimately put this together. Because I tell you what, we can't go back. The notion of saying, well, look, it's just too big, it's too complicated, and it's too much of a hassle, it's ridiculous. We've made a decision. Everybody's crossed a Rubicon, and we've said we've crossed over. We're going to get this done, and we are going to get this done.
All right, Congressman, we know you're working hard on this. We appreciate it, and we know we're going to see an impact on the economy. Good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Peter Roskam joining us there. The Alabama Senate race, there's that story coming down to the wire. The race is on Tuesday. Polls are showing a dead heat between embattled Republican candidate Roy Moore and Doug Jones. How President Trump is stepping up into help. We're looking ahead right now on Sunday Morning Futures ahead of Tuesday's election. Back in a minute.